because we've got a meeting in 3 weeks and I'd like that person to start reading. And so as long as we can confirm that they've actually made the appointment,
Okay.
I don't think there's a problem reaching out to them before they get the letter.
Yeah, that should be fine.
Thanks.
Mhm.
Hi there.
Hey,
Hard to believe we're still in Zoom land.
I know.
It's such a beautiful day.
When do you think that will change? You have an
Um,
opinion, Mike?
I'm gonna confirm again. The last we heard was that we would probably be meeting like this, at least, I think they said Labor Day.
Mhm.
Maybe
Right, the
Monday.
date is still Labor Day right now.
Great, thank you.
That could change, but right now it hasn't.
Okay, thanks. So Peggy, I think we're just presumed for our July 13th meeting, which is not that far off.
Yeah.
And then maybe in August, we'll all have to get back together in a room.
Well, he said Labor Day, so we'll probably,
Well, it could change, he said. So,
oh, if it changes, yeah.
but I feel like our July meeting is at this point very likely to be online.
Right.
So the question is, when the day comes and we all gather in a room together, do we need to have a facilitator? Or are we all still, are we going to be able to get together?
Mhm.
You think we still know each other?
I know. Well, we got lots of new people that we haven't actually been in the room with. Won't we?
And council should have filled our final seat on Monday, so Mike's going to check.
Oh, this past Monday, you think they did?
That was on the agenda.
Uh,
So that means we'll be at full strength
yeah, great.
for the first time. It feels like for the first time since a long time that we've actually had all the seats filled. So and we had some really good candidates again this time,
Yeah,
as you know, and so that's good.
yeah.
So who else you're expecting?
Well, Jeff, Mark, I think Mark's going to join us, and Jean. I hope. Mark has recently had a hip replacement, but he told me he was doing really well and thought he'd be able to join. And Jean, I haven't heard that she's not coming, but we'll give it a couple of minutes and see. Hopefully it's more than just the 3 of us, 4 of us. Sorry, Mike. I meant 3 of us on the commission. Well, you are on the commission too.
And Jeff is somewhere cool. He looks like he's in a
Yeah,
cabin.
where are you, Jeff?
Morning. Yeah, Lake Michigan.
Oh.
Oh, wow.
There's a little creek outside. Jody, my wife, is a nurse at a AYA camp called
Ah.
Minnewanka on the shores of Lake Michigan. So I'm up there with her for the week,
Oh, nice.
staining cabins,
You're
yeah.
cleaning cabin.
cleaning and staining cabins. Yeah, it's my work week, so I can eat in the dining hall.
So you're sort of you're on a work vacation.
That's right. Yes, very much so. Yeah, and our youngest George starts camp next week.
Ah,
So he and Jody will stay here, and I head back to Charlotte on Friday, tomorrow.
oh, too bad.
I know. I wish I could spend the whole summer up here.
I know. It's pretty chilly here. I mean, I'm still feeling cold. I don't know what the temperature, it must be in the 60s or something.
Oh, wow.
hope-
Glorious.
I opened the door about 6 o'clock this morning to get the paper, and it literally felt like late September.
I know.
Ooh,
What's
ooh,
it like
that's
up there?
nice.
You cold up there?
Very cold. Yeah, it was 40s night before last.
Wow.
And there's a big wind coming off of the lake, so it's a little choppy. We haven't been, well, I went swimming. George hasn't been swimming yet,
How long does
but
your,
it can be in the 80s or 90s, you know. I don't know if you
yeah,
know.
how long is your
I'm
wife?
sorry, Peggy.
Will she stay there?
They'll be here for 3 weeks. Yeah, that's what the session is this year. Usually it's a 2-3 week sessions. But because of COVID and some changes and wanting to keep people in the bubble, they've made it 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wi-Fi is actually okay at the moment. I may have to turn off my video. It seems to come and go, but it may be because of staff like streaming Netflix or something in the evenings, which is when I try and get on email. But at the moment, maybe they're all in meetings. So it's,
Yeah. Well, I hope we don't lose your
Fine.
visual because you've got some things to share.
yeah. I'll probably just turn off my video, but I can share screen.
You can share anyway.
Yeah.
All right. Well, maybe we'll start. I was hoping Jean and Mark were going to be here. Perhaps they'll join us in a few minutes.
Okay.
So as I sent the email, we're basically just going to talk about the nomination of these oaks around Friendship Court, although it may have ramifications, what we talk about today, for other nominations, trying to make them more efficient. Because we noticed the last time we went to City Council, we only had 6 trees, but it ended up being 40 pages that was submitted to City Council, which is quite a lot of information for only 6 trees. So, Jeff, you're going to stay with us though?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. Video will just be off because it's getting a little choppy.
Okay. And just a little background. We think most of these trees, at least 20 of them, were planted about the same time Friendship Court was developed in 1978. Although 6 more were added along Garrett Street going toward Avon Street at a later date. They're smaller trees. So they're about, I think, 20. There's 7 white oak, and that would make about 19 pin oaks around the whole complex. So we looked at these trees, and the Tree Commission looked at these trees in 2019, November, believe it or not, and decided to nominate them as street trees. I don't recall before, I don't think there are any trees that have been nominated, at least in this number, as street trees before by the Tree Commission. So this number presents an opportunity, obviously, to protect a number of trees, but an issue too of how we report it to City Council. So I think on our July meeting, we want to confirm with the commission that we do want to nominate these trees, even though we unanimously nominated them in November 2019, but present a way to do it more efficiently. I sent you out the ordinance, the original ordinance, and basically it seems like it gives us some leeway in how we present the information to City Council. It basically says the city arborist has to provide a written report and shall include the written recommendations of the Tree Commission. But it doesn't say exactly what form we have to submit this report, although the Tree Commission's report needs to list the trees, locations, and factors of why we want to nominate them, in this case, a street tree. But anyway, so, well, we got 2 Jeffs. So Jeff is going to present some ways that he's looked at. We can do it in a more efficient way for us and Mike, particularly for these street trees. Do Brian and Mike have anything to add before we look at what Jeff is going to suggest to us?
No, I'm just curious, I'm all for consolidating, but I'm not sure what we can eliminate. So I'm interested in what.
Yeah, let's have a look at, see what Jeff has.
Yeah, we're not talking about eliminating anything, Mike.
Okay.
But anyway, Jeff, are you going to be able to show us? Uh-oh, Jeff, are you there?
Yes, hold on just a second. Because it was getting a little choppy, I'm trying to call in on my cell phone. And then
Okay.
just use the iPad for the
So
visual.
while Jeff is doing that, let me just say that I think there are two things here. The first is sort of intake information. So the form that Mike has is that they've developed, to me, is a good way to intake the information. That doesn't mean that we need to report out the same exact format to council. We need to provide the elements that are in the ordinance. So the format that we report to council could be a condensed version. But to Mike's point, we might still want to intake the information and input the information. Pretty much whatever Jeff has come up with, or pretty much the way we're doing it. So it's not like one thing here. There are two things.
Yeah. Well, Jeff
Okay.
is going to present an intake, what do you call it, a nomination form too, that's a little condensed. Still has the same information, but he's put it on one page instead of two. So we're going to look at that. And then, so we're going to look at both those things, right, Brian? The nomination form itself, and then how we might report it. I don't mean to be taking the words out of Jeff's mouth, but he sent me a little bit of information right before this meeting. So
Exactly.
We're going to look at both.
Yep. So can you all hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I think cellular is going to work okay for audio, and then I need to be able to share the screen. So Mike or Jeremy, can one of you give me permission to do that?
Yeah, I'll take care of that. Okay. You should be able to now.
Let's see. Maybe it'll take a minute for it to catch up. It still says only hosts can share in this meeting. It may be that you have to give the other Jeff permission. Since
Okay.
there are two of me.
Gotcha. Let me do that. Okay, now try.
Yes. All right, let's see. I haven't done this before using.
So Brian, but you made a good point. We're not trying to eliminate anything. We're just trying to condense information.
That's not what I want to be sharing.
Yeah, because I mean,
Well-
you know, we want to give council enough information
Yeah.
to go on. One of the things too that made the last packet big and long was the fact that we wanted to include photos. It doesn't say we need to include a photo, but I think it's really a powerful
Right.
visual for council. Sorry, Jeff, you ready?
Yeah. So Brian, can you all see this page? I don't know what you're seeing.
No,
No, we
No.
cannot.
Okay, let's see.
of course, in this case, we have 26 trees that are very similar, only two species.
Correct. So
Okay.
Not necessarily we need a picture of every
So are you all seeing this now?
No.
All right.
I wonder, I mean, you could send it to me and then I could share it. But then I don't know if you'll be able to look at it.
Right. Yeah, it's funny being on the iPad. I haven't done this before from here. I thought
So
I
do
could
you-
be able to save or share the Google Drive. Do you all see anything yet? Do you see a web page loading?
No. We'll tell you if we do.
Okay. So what I did was, I mean, because the content of the nomination form obviously is comprehensive, and as Mike was saying, I think, and as Peggy you were saying, and Brian too, is that we still need to have all of that content, but I was wondering if we might be able to condense it into something a little bit tighter, so that, shoot, this is not working. I have it on here, but for some reason, I say screen.
So condensed is good, and also something that is a little bit perhaps friendlier to the user.
Right.
Especially in terms of like a, for a citizen making a nomination. There we
Well, I
go.
think it's coming up.
Okay, so now what do you see? Do you just see Zoom?
It's trying to broadcast. It says you're sharing screen, and now we see the form.
Okay.
There it is. There it is.
All right. So what I took was I think it was an Arlington, Virginia form. So basically it still has the same content. And some of the wording here obviously could be revised. It's just a Word document that I then turned into a PDF, but it notes the ordinance. And then the first A is species, and then there's obviously a tree location section, then owner of property, then nominator, if that's different, and that would obviously be the tree commission in this case, and then category of nomination, which follows the same categories that we have in the sorry, and you're going to see some Outlook things pop up probably. Same categories that we have in our in the ordinance, the Charlottesville ordinance, and then notes that there may be supporting documents and or photos. And then there's a small area for comments. And then one thing that changed here at the bottom is that there's a space for Mike and his office to note things that are relevant to the arborist review. And it sort of condenses, and I don't know if we have this actually, if we have a percent condition of the tree or even a total score, but there might be a way in which some of that information that Mike has can get condensed into also this one page. So in essence, what we would be giving to City Council could be a page per tree, really, and then everything else could be in basically an appendix, supporting documents, photographs, etc. So the only thing that they might have to review for this process would be a one-page form. And then obviously there's some other questions about presenting this in aggregate, which I can go into in a minute. Are you guys still seeing this? No.
It
So
just
it dropped off.
Okay.
It looks good. It looks good, Jeff. We've just lost it again.
It looks good. It looks good.
Is my voice repeating?
We got a lot of reverb on Peggy. So yeah, I agree. That looks good. So Mike, just refresh my memory. Right now, when there's a form, and then technically there's a recommendation from us, from commission.
Right.
Which recommendation takes the form of just a cover letter, basically listing the trees. Your evaluation right now is a separate.
Correct.
Would you, so the way Jeff has it set up is that you would provide sort of that checklist of information, and then if you had anything further to say about the tree, you could have like an attachment, all right? That would go in the appendix. Is that what everybody's envisioning? Does that work?
I think that checklist, I don't have a problem with simplifying the arborist report, but I think that like that checklist, for example, doesn't take into account the site and some of the other things that the arborist report does that are kind of important, in my opinion, to forming this recommendation. And I think that, and you're suggesting, just so I'm clear, you're suggesting that instead of having an arborist report and a tree commission report, we have one report that has one recommendation. Is that how I'm understanding it? Is that correct?
Well, I think it would be, you'd still have your report, Mike, but this one page, the nomination form. So the nomination form would have the things that the tree commission has put together or that individuals have put together. So this would be both relevant for a citizen and then also for the commission.
Okay.
But at the bottom of it, it would be the opportunity for you to say, we agree,
Sure.
this makes sense, or no. And it sort of summarizes your report in that for office use only section, where you
Okay.
could really, you could say, this is our recommendation, or no, we don't recommend this tree being approved or not approved. And then if council was like, well, why don't they?
Mhm.
Why doesn't Mike or the arborist not approve of this? They can then go into the appendix and look at your actual report and say, okay, I understand now why this is not being approved.
Sure. Yeah.
Does that make
Yeah, I
sense?
don't have a
Or
problem with that. Yeah, that makes sense to me. But so are we suggesting using this sort of more condensed form to give the council instead of in lieu of an arborist report, unless there's an appendix or something, to eliminate paperwork and pages in the submission?
That's what we're trying to do, Mike, is
Okay.
eliminate, so much. So it's like an executive summary,
Mhm.
for each tree. I mean,
exactly. Yeah.
so it doesn't mean that you couldn't add information to that, photos or whatnot, but they can quickly see the executive summary for each
Right.
tree, which I think makes sense. One thing, Jeff, I was asking on, is there any way to add the person nominating? I think you had comments, maybe a couple lines, so they could add a little bit of comment. We can't see it right now, so.
Yeah, you know what I'll do is I'll just email this to you, Peggy, and then you could pull it up. I probably should have
Okay.
done that before, knowing that this was a bad connection.
Yeah, that's okay. Can you do that right now?
Yeah, we'll do that right now.
Okay, so Jeremy, you'll let me, once I get it, I'll let you know. You just let me share my.
Yes, I just made you co-host.
Okay.
Good to go.
All right.
I mean, I like the approach, and I think it's very much in keeping with how council receives information from staff generally, right? I mean, there's that executive summary, and it gives them everything they need to know. And if they want to dig deeper or dive deeper or ask whys, then they can look into the supporting documentation. Obviously, for a lot of these, I can't imagine the supporting documentation to be that extensive.
Mhm.
It might just be paragraphs or page for the tree commission. If we are the nominator, and we fill out this form, it comes from us, it has that information. If it comes from a private citizen or somebody with private property, then I could imagine that we might have more to add because we didn't actually do the nomination. That still probably wouldn't amount to more than like a 1 or 2 page sort of cover letter. So what we sent out this last time was literally 1 page, cited the code, said, here are the 6 trees, here are the reasons why we've nominated them. I can't imagine us providing, as the commission, providing much more than that. So each tree gets this 1 page form, which I like. There's a 1 to 2 page cover letter from the commission, or maybe even a 1 page. And then there's a whole bunch of documentation, which might amount to a page per tree. And we're not going to get away from that. I mean, this is still, for 20 something trees, this is still going to be 40 plus pages.
Yeah.
Or maybe not 40 plus pages,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's still going to be a 30 plus page packet, especially if you put in photos in. But for the times where we nominate 6 trees, we could really get this down to being closer to 15 pages.
Yeah. I was just looking, Mike, that on your report that went to city council, I mean, you used 3 pages for each tree approximately. I'm just looking quickly. It seems to me that could be reduced to 1 page too. I mean, you don't need such a big photograph, for instance, but
Okay.
I mean, I would think your supporting document could be 1 page per tree, probably, I mean, if you look at it. But let's see. Can I share? No, let's see. I'll have to share my screen here.
And then the other thing that I sent along, Peggy, too, was this notion of bundling tree nominations. So I think we'd still obviously have this 1 form per tree,
Yeah.
but then maybe the cover letter that Brian was talking about could proceed maybe a plan page that could have a plan image, each tree numbered on that plan, and then have a key that would have the number of the tree, and then it's you know, a name or designation of some sort, so that we could present them as a group and basically say, you know, it's desirable given the health of these trees, their similar age, their location proximate to one another, that
Mhm.
they all get nominated at the same time and approved in aggregate. So it would be a way of kind of supporting those individual nominations, but not necessarily obviating the need for individual nominations. So it would be maybe just adding some more context, not necessarily superseding the need for individual nominations, if that makes sense.
Can we just go back for a minute, Jeff, just because I've pulled
Uh-huh.
up the first
yep.
one. So let's kind of look at that. My only, you know, I think you could, my thought was to leave a little bit more room for supporting when the person or tree commission is nominating. So they could, you know, why are you nominating this tree? I think you could, you know, condense the title at the top, for instance. I mean, and then leave a little bit more room maybe for comments, so you don't necessarily have to attach a description of why it's significant. You can, you know, you can put it on here, it seems to me.
That makes sense.
And then you could say include a photograph. I mean, I don't know that you need G, for instance. Anyway, I just think there's a way to give a little more room for explaining on here why you are nominating this tree. So you don't necessarily have to add some an attachment unless you want to.
So
Mhm.
on the photo part, I mean, on the one hand, it could be one of us as a commissioner or the citizen taking a photo, but since Mike has to go out there and assess the tree anyhow,
Yeah,
I would rather Mike be taking the picture.
yeah,
So I think we could
eliminate that.
take G off here, and G just becomes part of Mike's report.
That's fine with me.
Yeah,
And so you gain a little space on this form to, you know, do what Peggy's suggesting. But if somebody wanted to write up the longer, let's say it's Robin nominating the tree, and she wants to say a lot about the tree, which would be great. She could still, that F could be a description or whatever, and say, you know, attach additional supporting comments, and that could go into the backside, the appendix. We don't want to force people to only say one sentence about the tree.
no,
but-
no,
No,
But at
it
least
would
if
be,
they
it would
wanted
be
to give,
nice. Right.
I'm sorry, Jeff.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say, it would be nice for people to try and condense their thoughts about it to just the things that are most pithy
right.
or important, and then have a narrative. It wants to be a longer narrative. And that's the importance of the executive summary, I think, is to
Yeah.
make it easy for council to say, okay, I get it. This is why it's important. It's sort of like the elevator pitch. You know, you want to just make it really snappy and strong. And they're like, okay, yes. Or if it can't be, then see the supporting documents for extra information.
Yeah.
Correct.
I mean, if you make the title at the top smaller, you know, it's nice to have a logo. Maybe we don't need it, or it's just smaller. And then
Yeah.
F is, I think there'll be room for a number of lines there, you know, for people to write, or, you know, why they think it's important. And like you said, make it short and pithy, because city council doesn't want to read, you know, a one-page document of why it's important.
Right.
Again,
they want
it's just, you know, it's an executive
Mhm.
summary, so.
Right.
I think it's good. I mean, there might be, you know, I mean, there are probably a few things we need to change word-wise here, but I think generally I think it's good.
Great. Will you all, could people, or Peggy, could you send this out so people could mark it up, and then I can make changes prior to the commission meeting in July?
All right, I think maybe I'll just send it to the Harbor Committee instead of everybody. What do you think?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then, of course, I'll send
Yeah.
it to Brian and Mike and me.
And Mike, what do you think of this bottom section? This was based on Arlington's arborist information, but if there's anything more there that you'd like, or less, or something
Yeah,
different?
I'll have some comments, but I'll try to keep it to this box. Like the total score and stuff, when they're not considering the site, really, they're just considering the tree as a specimen.
Mhm.
Yeah, there would be some things I would add or change.
Yeah, so Mike and, yeah, the three of us can mark it up and I'll send it to Mark. Your second page there.
This would be to go out potentially with, like, say somebody downloaded the nomination form from the Charlottesville website. I think it would be good to have what you already have, maybe in the ordinance, or maybe this isn't really even needed because the ordinance covers the definition of why a street tree versus a memorial tree versus, another designation. So I don't know that it needs a second page. This is how Arlington's page was put together, so that you could actually download the form, reference the criteria, and then say, okay, I think this tree fits X.
So I don't think we can rely on people actually reading the ordinance. So I think any way that we can communicate why they're nominating the tree. I like that. We don't have that currently in our form. I don't have our current form in front of us. There's no description, so
Well,
people know.
There's some verbiage on the top, but it doesn't really, well, it does a little bit. So I
There's
mean,
some,
there's verbiage on the top of the form I'm looking at right now, but I think, Jeff, you're right. Yeah, if we just had a page that went with the form, they don't have to submit that. It's just for their information, so they know.
Exactly.
A one-page thing that really summarizes the ordinance, I think is a good idea. That's a good idea. I don't think, do we have to have that ready for July 13th? Or do you want to take a stab at it, Jeff?
I can take a stab at it, just basically providing the verbiage that you had on that original form, and then maybe pulling some things from the ordinance and sending it out
Yeah.
for you all to review.
What's your time frame to be able to do that?
I bet I could work on it on the plane. So maybe by the early part of next week.
That's fine. Yeah,
So I could change the form, make a stab at the second page, and then send out both together.
Yeah.
And then you guys could redline the revised, because I already have some comments here about eliminating G and more space for comments and smaller logo. So I could make those adjustments, send it out with a second page for you all to redline.
Well, why don't the three of us send, I'm not going to look at that second page because, why don't the three of us look at the first page and just send you our thoughts on the first page, and then you can work on both, and then you can send it again to the whole Arbor Committee, which include us three again, and Mark and Jean. Does that make sense? Sort of two steps.
Yep.
I'll send what's here to Brian and Mike, and we can get back to you as soon as, by the mid next week or first of next week, if possible. Shouldn't take too long with any of our comments. Can you do that, Mike?
yeah, that's fine.
So then when you send it out to the whole Arbor Committee and Mike, it'll at least have our comments.
Excellent.
Okay. All right. Now, let me,
So I just want to be clear what we're trying to accomplish in July. We're presenting this form for the commission to review, and based on all of our input, and then to adopt the form. We're also putting forward the trees at Garrett. We still have to
yeah.
do the
What's the next-
input of all this information on this form. So it's like, which comes first? I mean, are we going to do all the nominations as this form?
No.
And then-
That's the second thing we're going to look at.
Okay, but if the commission has not approved this form, how are we going to submit the nominations for the Garrett trees at the July 13th meeting? On the existing form?
No, I would think, remember, I was the one who nominated them. So
But which process are we going to use?
Well, should we look at the second? Jeff.
So
let's-
have all
I was nominated,
26,
Jeff, if I were.
maybe I was,
nominated-
Mhm,
if I-
go ahead.
Well, should we look at the second thing you suggested first, or is this, I could just take this, once this has been revised, and nominate the Garrett Street Oaks using this, right?
So just to clarify, because I'm maybe confused, all 26 trees that we want to put forward were nominated in 2019, or only 19 of those 26?
26 trees were put forward on one. I didn't do 26 applications. I did one application for the 26
Uh-huh.
trees. Well, let's,
Okay.
Brian.
So,
answer
so
your-
I could
let's
see,
look at the second thing first.
right. So I could see, given that those were approved, right, by the tree commission?
They need to be on a separate form. You can't nominate, an entire block of trees on one form. They have to be separate.
Well,
for the
Okay.
process.
well, let's look at, again, Mike, that seems kind of crazy that I walk down the street and do 26 trees. But let's look at what you, the second,
Well, I just want to back up here for a minute. Mike has to do 26 trees.
yeah. Mike has to do the 26.
And we have to, I mean, there needs to be some linkage between the tree nominated and the tree reviewed by Mike.
Mhm.
And if we're talking about, again, there are two processes here. There's the nomination and then there's the reporting to council. So we want to deal with reducing the bulk of the report to council, but that doesn't mean that we're going to go around and not properly nominate the trees. We still need to nominate the trees.
Yeah,
And that means that we need to, even if there's boilerplate language, we need to say something about each of the trees, to go back to Jeff's point, that ties into some kind of map and key that says, here's the nomination for tree 1, here's the arborist recommendation for tree 1, here's the nomination for tree 2. But I mean, I guess why I'm asking is because, are we asking the commission on July 13 to review and approve this form, and at the same time submitting nominations for all the Garrett trees? And if so, on what form? I'm very confused now about how you envision the sequence.
well, yeah, I mean, Jeff, you just sent me another email, just a minute,
Mhm.
Brian. And does it have a form with it, or is it just your,
No, it's just my notes.
okay.
Yeah.
So, well, let's just look on his notes on how he thinks about consolidating.
Because I think my notion here, and maybe it's out of sequence with what we would ultimately need to do, or even with the commission meeting, but it seems like, and Brian, maybe you have to weigh in on this, and maybe it's retroactive to a certain degree, is that if the Arbor Committee agrees that this is an okay form to move forward with, that we could then, in the next 3 weeks, I could go around and note in a plan all of these 26 trees, and then create a nomination form for each one that we could then take to commission in the middle of July. So it would be, but I guess at that point in time, Mike would not have had the chance to go through and make his suggestions at the bottom relative to them being recommended or not. So it does seem like we would need to postpone that recommendation to the next meeting of tree commission as a possibility, to give us time to work through all of this. I don't know. I'm just making that as a suggestion.
I mean, I think that's correct. I mean, I think that's a lot of work to be done between now and, because that packet has to go, we don't have till July 13th. We have till July 5th or 6th or whatever the date before, the week before the meeting.
Well,
Because we have to get, if we were nominating them, we can't just show up at the meeting on the 13th and say, here's a packet of trees. We have to send it out in advance. So I think we're pressed for time in terms of, and also Mike's schedule. So Mike needs to speak.
Brian, but remember, the tree commission nominates before Mike makes his report. So we nominated those Garrett Street trees in November 2019 based on my application.
Right.
Now, Mike said that even though the whole commission agreed that I needed to go back and make a report on every single tree.
Correct.
So we could still, at the July 13th, based on what was before, just reconfirm that the commission wants to nominate these trees.
Okay, that's fine.
Eh,
You're right. Mike
yeah.
doesn't have to do his work before the 13th.
Right, right. I think
Okay.
the question is, when you have street trees, it's probably not going to come up on any of the other nominations, whether it's special to species or heritage. You know, it's probably going to be a single tree. When you got street trees, they're going to be more than one, more than likely. So the question is, on street trees, particularly these, do you need to have an application for every, you know, the comments, the reason is going to be exactly the same for every single tree. Do you need to have a report for every tree, or can you just list them? Because an applicant is only listing the, wait, let me look. Oh, an applicant is only, let me bring that up. Ah,
I mean, what I might recommend for these is to still do a nomination, exceptional tree nomination form for each tree, but then note in the comments section, see cover letter or see plan for,
Correct.
you know, so basically there could be a document that each nomination form refers to, but in essence, you know, you still need a form for each tree so that Mike
Correct.
can note. Okay.
but
Correct, because then we have to go forward in the process. Then Mike could have different recommendations for each of the trees.
Exactly.
Council could pick and choose which of the trees it wants to save. And so there needs to be something that links each of these trees back to our nomination.
the nomination, the way it is now, the individual does not list the DBH of each tree. Basically, you're just nominating the trees and giving a reason why.
Correct.
I don't know why you need one for each tree, because the reason is going to be the same.
But there needs to be, these all need to be linked together. We need to have a way, and in this case, it's the commission. So if Jeff goes out, he's going to start north, south, east, west, wherever he starts. He's going to start counting a tree. He's going to say, this is tree 1. So that when Mike comes along and makes a recommendation on tree 1, there's a nomination form for tree 1. I don't think we can get around that. I mean, I really feel we need to just do that. And frankly, we have the easiest part. All we have to do is nominate. It's going to be boilerplate, one form, and
Right.
Mike's got to go out and actually evaluate each tree. Mike's got, in this case, Mike's got the bulk of the work.
Oh, right. Which,
I don't have
Yeah.
a problem with one form per tree.
all
I
right,
mean, Jeff, I think you can handle that.
let's bring it
With
up
the-
one more time.
With the
Thank you,
condensed
Mike.
form, I think so. I mean, as long as it's really, it's, you know, it's filling out pretty much the same thing for each tree and then referencing a plan that will show context.
I'm trying
Correct.
to find why can't I get let's just bring it up one more time. Why is it not coming up?
As long as that's okay with Mike and, you know, relative to the work that he needs to do. And if he's got a list there at the bottom that's, you know, more specific to what he knows he needs to do, that seems like it could work okay.
What is your thing? Okay, let's just bring it up one more time. Just look, can y'all see it?
Not
Have
yet.
I lost you?
Not yet.
Let's see. All right. You can't see it?
No.
Um,
There we go.
okay. I mean, but if you look at it at the top, every single tree, it's going to be exactly the same except for species. You know, for the Garrett Street.
Correct.
Species, tree location is going to be exactly the same. Owner is going to be exactly the same. Nominator is going to, street tree.
Sure. That's what makes it so easy to fill out.
That's what I
Yeah.
mean. But why do you have to have 26? They're all exactly the same, except for one's going to be.
So then the nomination for tree 1 will be tied to the recommendation of tree 1, will be by Mike, will be tied to the
Oh, I see.
recommendation of tree
I
1 by
got
the commission, which will be
Yeah.
tied to council's final approval. Council
Gotcha.
may say, we only want trees 7, 8, 10, 13, and 14.
I got you. I got you.
And what this may also allow for And I haven't yet heard back from Missy Creasy. She said she was collecting the plan information for me, or was going to put me in touch with somebody. And I don't think I've seen anything relative to that. Is that council may say, given what we know of the friendship development that's happening, it's not possible to really nominate this one for preservation because it's in conflict with X.
Yeah.
But let's do 15 of 19. And that's great. So hopefully it allows for some of that flexibility.
No, I'd forgotten that Mike's report, executive summary, is going to be on this too. I was just thinking for my nomination, basically they're all the same, but I got you.
Mhm.
Yeah. So basically you'd almost have a map showing 1, 2, 3, 4, starting at Avon Street or wherever it is, going west and then down 2nd Street or whatever, number of trees.
Yeah. And that was the second email that I sent,
Yeah, let me
Peggy.
bring that up.
I mean, it's a sketch plan, but the notion is to have a plan.
Let's see.
And it could be GIS. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be an aerial photograph. It could be a city plan.
Can you all see that? Is it the aerial photograph that,
No, we see the form.
oh,
I called it bundled nomination _2.
all right, wait a minute. You still see the form? Wait a minute. Okay. All right, wait a minute. Okay. Now, let's see. Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And then did you get a second one too,
Yeah,
Peggy? Okay.
okay.
So
You want
this was
me to bring that up
basically
too?
saying,
Want me to bring
yeah,
that up?
if you wouldn't mind.
All right, let me get that
I
one.
apologize for my bad connection here.
Okay.
So I think the notion of
Is that one
bundling
too?
the nominations in a plan version would be to allow for city council to understand the context of these trees. They're not scattered around the city. They're actually proximate to one another. And that could lend itself to, some efficiencies in terms of review. And then also may, help them make this designation because they can see them in aggregate and they can understand them as a group of trees that are related to one another for various reasons, either planting dates, age, DBH, health, etc. And so the second PDF basically just shows what I was talking about before, which is a notion that there could be an aerial photograph or maybe it's a GIS plan from the city that shows current development and then maybe even future development. I don't know, maybe there's 2 plans that are needed for this particular.
I haven't downloaded. Wait a minute. This is confusing with oh, just a minute. Now I've got everything.
So
Okay.
Jeff, do you envision this going on a form for bundle tree nominations, or just this is guideline for the narrative?
Let me
I-
download.
I think a guideline for the narrative. I mean, I don't know that anybody other than the tree commission should really bundle nominations,
Correct, yeah.
right? I mean, I think
Yeah.
this is just for us to say, this is how we would like to make this a slightly more efficient process for council and or to help in the support of the nomination of all of these 26 trees, is to show them in context in the city and then relative to current development and future development if possible. So it would be like basically a plan with a key, tree 1, tree 2, tree 3, tree 4, tree 5, all called out in plan and then also in the key. And maybe there's an additional column that says something about the key criteria, like the value that Mike puts to it, if there is actually sort of a value number, if he adds site plus DBH plus species plus X, Y, and Z, and then that comes with a total score. We could have relative to the key for tree 1, there could be a relative total score so that council could also use this page basically as an executive summary of all the trees that are being recommended for preservation. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So I agree on all of those points. I agree that number 1, we should not expect nor really encourage individual citizens to do bundles of trees because it's complicated and they don't have the documentation necessarily. Number two, and by the way, somebody did, after that article appeared in Seaville about the new trees, conservation trees, somebody did email me about the Garrett trees and said that they were interested, and it sounded like they were going to nominate them. And I said, no, that's taken care of. The commission's working on that. Number two, being able to do something like this is important, and for bundled trees. And the third thing I will say is that for these particular trees, I think we ought to think even beyond their immediate location and the possibility of development around them, and talk about Garrett Street in its entirety. Not just the fact that, as Peggy points out, has pointed out repeatedly, that Garrett Street was highlighted as one of the great streets that works examples, but also what's happened on Garrett Street since, and the several ways in which we've lost trees on Garrett to development. And I think that needs to be, for these particular trees, that needs to be highlighted. All right, so not only in the Apex building, but the 323 building. I mean, there's basically been a denuding of Garrett Street. And I think that needs to go in this particular batch, and it needs to be highlighted because I think that provides additional context beyond future development of Friendship Court. So using this approach, I think, is really critical for that, for bundled trees.
Yeah. So, Jean, I'm sorry you haven't heard the beginning. We basically reiterated that we had nominated these Garrett Street trees and Second Street in November of 2019 by the Tree Commission. We got stopped not only because of COVID, but just sort of thinking about how do you nominate 26 trees and make it efficient for City Council, because the last nomination of 6 trees was 40 pages. So Jeff has taken upon, we appreciated himself, to present a more consolidated way to basically a one-page executive summary for trees, not only these trees, but for any tree that's nominated to go to City Council. There could be supporting documentation either by the applicant or by Mike that council could read, but they get a snapshot on one page of what the tree was. And if they wanted to delve further, they could. So we're getting close to the end of the hour. It seems like, so one, we thought Jeff would send out, or I can do it, whatever, because I have it now, Jeff. Just send out the first page. It seems, yeah, because the first page that you had on the consolidated form to us on the Arbor Committee and Mike to give him feedback before our full board commission meeting on that one, the form, right? That's the first thing to do. The second thing is that then, Jeff, you have volunteered to take the new form, right? Do we need, no. Okay, Brian, let me see. So we want to renominate the oak trees around Friendship Court at our next meeting so we can keep going on this process. The question is, can we just reuse what I nominated before, just for the Tree Commission to confirm? Mike does not obviously have to do a report yet.
I still am going to need a sheet for each individual tree.
Right,
I mean,
right. Yeah,
okay.
you will. I'm talking about I'm just talking about what the Tree Commission needs to do.
So
So
to me-
here's my feeling. We can do these things simultaneously. I don't think the Tree Commission is going to look at the form in July and say it's the worst form we've ever seen. We want to start from scratch. I think we just need to assume that the Arbor Committee can develop this form. We can nip and tuck it over the next week or two. Based on Jeff's schedule, he can go out and collect the information, assuming that this is the form that we're going to present it on. Not a lot's going to change in this form beyond our few comments. I mean, do you feel you can do that, Jeff? I mean, you don't have to wait till there's an official form. I don't think the commission really needs to, you need to see it, but I don't think we really need a formal approval of the form by the commission. I mean, they can vote on it, but I don't think I think we can proceed that this is going to be the form going forward. after our edits.
Okay, so,
Right. I can fill out this form using what Peggy had filled out before to create 26 new formal tree nomination forms, and then take those, do we then take those to commission the next meeting?
Jeff,
And then they can go to Mike for his evaluation?
yeah, well,
Correct.
we'll get our feedback first on the form you've suggested. So you can change that form first. That's what Brian's saying. Let the Arbor Committee basically make the changes to the form.
Yep,
And
yep.
then you take that form that's changed and go out and do this. Now, I can help you do the 26 trees if you need. I mean, it's probably gonna be pretty easy, but whatever. And then anyway, so then
Yep.
in July, we will present the 26 forms to the tree commission, right, Brian? Mike doesn't have to do anything yet. We're just
Right.
reconfirming that we want to submit them. I mean,
Correct.
Mike, the only thing you have to do is give your feedback on the form, which I'll open up just so.
Correct.
So what I would also like to do, since I think that it'll be a relatively easy lift, given that you've already done the bulk of the work, Peggy, to fill out these 26 forms, is to then create a plan diagram. And maybe I'll create this so that Arbor Committee can at least review it prior to the commission meeting. But I'd like to then present that as a notion of the bundled executive summary,
Yeah.
saying, here are the trees in their location, in context. And this is, like, part of the cover letter in essence. That
Yeah,
makes sense.
that's great, Jeff. That's the most important discussion that the commission needs to have on
Yeah.
July 13th. Not about the shape of the form, but do we all understand what we're going forward with?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So Jean, just quickly, this is the one-page summary, which includes the tree commission's or anyone's individual nomination. It also includes Mike's recommendations at the bottom. So I'm going to send that out to Mike and everybody on the Arbor Committee and you get back to Jeff with any changes you see needed on the form, and he'll then he will make the changes, and then he will take this out and do the 26 trees and put them on the also do an individual application for each tree, but also put them on the consolidated form. I'm sorry, I was having to kind of go through try to figure out how to show you all this, and didn't listen completely, Jeff, to what you were talking about. But I agree. I trust you. And then at the commission meeting, we will basically reaffirm these 26 oak trees. And then Mike will make his recommendations.
And then looking farther ahead to actually submitting it to council, and in the concept of bundled trees and the context and all that, into a comment Jeff made earlier, I think for these particular trees, I think a really powerful thing will be to show perhaps some overhead, Google photo or some city photo of what Garrett Street looked like a couple years ago before trees started to come down.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if we can find a current photo or if the city or any of us have a drone that we can put up there, but I think it would be really telling to juxtapose a picture of what it looks like right now.
Great.
Because again, it's really critical that we get council and everybody to think about this as more than just that block.
Yeah, I agree, Brian. I think our cover letter for this nomination needs to be strong and include all the things you're talking about, the reasons why and what's happened to this street. We do have some great pictures of the oaks that were taken down because of the Apex building, but it would be great. Maybe somebody's got a drone.
We
Maybe
could,
you have a drone in your office, Jeff?
We
Gene,
do. I'm not licensed to fly it, but I could probably get somebody out there to fly it.
Maybe Jean can go to the roof of her building and get a good aerial.
well, I was just asking my husband if we can lean over from our terrace, which is on the corner of Second and Garrett. And I'm not sure what we can see the trees that are planted right in front of our building, but we can't get a good shot of beyond that to see the ones that where they were removed.
Jean, we don't call.
No, I've been talking about getting a drone for various reasons, but I don't have one yet. I bought one for my grandson, but he's got it up in DC. And I couldn't take pictures with it. Would a picture from the street be okay? I mean, also you see now when you look down the street is a lot of equipment and trucks and no vegetation whatsoever on Garrett.
Yeah.
Well, I think that Jeff is going to compile this. So maybe Jeff, you can think about how we might get photographs working with Brian too. We're
I
almost
think before and after, and again, remember, this began several years back with the treehouse, the corner building, and the damage to trees there, and then it's just continued. It's just been, and I know we haven't been able to do a lot about it until we try to fix the code, but when I made this presentation, our annual presentation to the Sierra Club, that's one of the comments was, man, it's just a chipping away at Garrett Street.
yeah.
One thing after another. And if we don't find a way to preserve and protect some of this batch of trees, it's going to essentially complete that process.
There's also from our terrace, you can see very clearly that the large tree next to Sultan Kebab, under which they have their tables outside, is dying.
Yep.
You can see that the roots on the construction side have been damaged, and it's
Yep.
just it's dying from that side and toward us.
Correct.
Toward the street. There's almost doesn't give any shade anymore on the one side. So that tree is a goner.
And Paul Jose, past chair of the commission, been sounding this alarm for several years about what's happening on Garrett.
Right.
So the context is, again, to restate the obvious, the context on this batch of trees is got to be a broader context.
Right.
And it has to sort of highlight, I mean, this is an opportunity not to just, since we're going into a code revision, a zoning ordinance revision, this is an opportunity not only to highlight these trees, but to say, this is what it looks like when the code is the way it is.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
also with council waiving setbacks. Because
Yeah.
I think that's part of what happened both on the Apex and whatever that other, I can't remember, 523 or whatever it is building. Jeff, let me just ask you one thing quickly.
Wow, is that what
Asking
happened?
you to do a lot. For the second page here, do you want me, I could take a stab at that.
Are you, that would be fantastic, Peggy. Are you showing that second page? I don't see it
The
up.
second page, Jean, this is just for someone making an application. It basically summarizes the ordinance so they understand, for instance, what the 4 categories of trees are, or a little bit in the process. To just,
Peggy, I think you're
go
still
out.
sharing.
Yeah.
You're still sharing my email.
Oh, I'm
sorry.
sorry. You have to do share every time you want.
I think so.
Okay. Wait a
Yeah,
minute.
pain.
Up. Oh, okay. Where? I don't know. Okay. Wait. Why am I not getting?
So while Peggy's doing the technical work,
Okay,
there
wait.
we go.
Okay.
Mike, did you ever receive a nomination from that resident who wanted to nominate a tree on their own property that I copied you on?
Yeah, I never received a nomination.
Okay.
Oh, dogtooth trout lilies. Those are pretty.
Why can't I
There it is. We see it.
see it now?
Yep.
Okay. So anyway, Jean, just the second page summarizes for the applicant the ordinance and why you nominate, why you nominate individual trees.
Right.
We just go out with the application form so people don't have to read the whole ordinance, a 1-page executive summary. So I'll work on that, Jeff.
Awesome.
But in the meantime, I'll work on that and send it out too, but I'm going to go ahead and send out this first page to get the comments back to you from the Arbor Committee and Mike for the first page there.
Thank you.
And the overarching goal here, I mean, again, to state the obvious, but Peggy and I have talked about this, is that what we want to do is get to a point where we're nominating, this is an outstanding number of trees, but in any given year, we're nominating, if not every quarter, at least several quarters a year, council is seeing a few trees coming before it each quarter. Because this is really a critical way for us to stay on council's radar. And there are plenty of trees to nominate. And if we have to be the lead for most of them, if we don't have private citizens, I would argue that if we find trees in neighborhoods and we know people who live there, the more people that are nominating, the more that council sees us on a regular basis instead of once every 18 to 36 months, is it keeps trees on their radar. This is a low cost way to promote and advertise the urban forest.
Yeah.
So in that sense, I want to thank everybody who's worked and is working on trying to make this a normalized, formal process that council gets used to seeing. And again, the more efficient we can make it, the shorter the packet, the more that they'll be glad to see that this is happening.
Yeah. And this is a task of the Arbor Committee. And we've tried to do it twice a year, and we may try to do more than that. But I've asked Mike before, because he knows he knows trees in Charlottesville, when he sees them, if he could please notify the Arbor Committee that, this is a possible nominee. I think maybe we ought to encourage the Tree Commission to notify, anybody to notify the Arbor Committee when they see them. And we also work very closely with Robin Haynes, on cats, because she has a notable tree website. And they just went to Washington Park recently and are going to put some trees there on their notable site. Because there's some, she was telling, I can't remember exactly, but she was telling me about some incredible trees. And I was just going to ask you, Mike, I was at Lambeth Field the other day and I sent a picture of a scarlet oak that is just incredible to Brian, just because I happened to be there with my grandson having a birthday party. And could we get the university to nominate trees? Oh, that's not in Charlottesville, is it? It's not Charlottesville property.
Yeah.
Anyway, this tree is just takes your breath away. So I guess we can't do that. Anyway, I agree. We ought to be more aggressive about this and alerting people to it. Even if we nominate 4 times a year, twice a year, just start keeping a list of possible nominees. So anyway, we're getting a little past the hour. I will send this nomination form out. And if you can get your comments back to Jeff by at least, before midweek next week, if possible. I will work on the second page, and then Jeff, as soon as you get that revised, the first one page revised, do you need to send it out to us again, Mike, or can he just go ahead and start nominating, get the trees ready for Garrett, for Friendship Court?
Do we need to send what out again?
Do we need to send, once all of us get our comments in about the nomination form, and Jeff revises it, I guess you should send it out again to all of us?
Yeah, I'll send out a final and make sure that all of the red lines are captured and
Yeah.
that looks good to Mike and the rest of the committee. Yep.
Yeah. That sounds good.
And then I guess the last step in this, once we have an approved form, a revised form, is I filled a couple out, but I fill them out by hands. I mean, how easy is it right now to fill these and submit online? They're pretty
I could
easy.
make it I could try and make it an editable PDF. That is a good way to do it, where you can just fill it out and then submit it via email.
Yeah.
So yep.
Well, could somebody in City Hall do that, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, let's get a form
Yeah.
that we can use, and we'll see if we can make it editable. I mean, the way it was done before is it was filled out and emailed
Yeah.
to me, so.
Filled out by hand, Mike?
No,
or
I mean,
digitally
mine
and then
out.
emailed.
Okay.
It was
Yeah.
it's a Word document, I think, on now. I mean, I filled it out on the computer and
Yeah.
sent it in. I didn't.
But I think Jeff's right. I mean, I think the standard is if we develop it finally in an editable PDF version,
Yeah.
that's sort of more the standard these days.
Right.
Yep.
Well, let's get
And
it.
nice to have people not be able to kind of add lines and then have it expand to 2 pages or more. Like it should just
Correct.
be a concise
Yep.
summary.
Okay.
Great.
All right.
Thank-
Thank you. I'll send this out and I'll summarize what we agreed to on the email. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you
Thanks,
all.
everyone.
Appreciate it.
Have a nice day, this wonderful day.
Yeah, enjoy. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye, thanks.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Yeah, for
Okay.
all your work. I can't get out of here. Yeah, why can't I get out of here? I can't seem to get out.